Okay, well, welcome to a talk about fasting at Performance Gains. My name is Coach Dave Shen, and I'm one of the coaches there. A little bit about me. I am an associate certified coach at the International Coaching Federation, where I do life coaching with evidence-based and esoteric methods. I also am an ADAPT certified functional health coach. I'm a level 2 precision nutrition coach. I've also dabbled in swim coaching through turtle immersion. I do a lot of kettlebells, calisthenics, original strength, a lot of rehab disciplines. I have a lot of interest. And my past is I was a triathlete for a long time. I did 6 Ironmans. So just as a disclaimer, as I start into this discussion, I'm not a licensed medical professional, and please, take the information today with, just as information. Please do not go out and start treating yourself with some medical condition. Please talk to your doctor before you start anything that you hear in this presentation. So just do that. Do not take this as medical advice or anything like that. And with that, let's dive into fasting. Whoops, why am I going here? Okay, let's see, can I go? No, hold on. Okay, good. All right, so today's talk is basically, here's the agenda. What is fasting? Go a little bit into the history, what happens to your body, some benefits and side effects. How do you put this into place? A little bit about that. Troubleshooting. Might encounter some problems, how to get through some of them, and a little bit about athletes, since most of you are probably members of Performance Gains and love to work out, and how can fasting help you get to where you want to be. All right, so what is fasting? So according to Britannica.com, it's just simply abstinence from food or drink for health, ritualistic, religious, or ethical purposes. And that abstention could be complete or partial, lengthy, just a short time, or intermittent. So there's a lot of variance in fasting. It isn't just one way, but it actually covers a whole bunch of different ways. And we'll talk about that in a second, because common fasting patterns that you might see are something like just don't eat for a certain number of days, even weeks into months. The record apparently for the number of days consecutively that someone didn't eat is 382 days. And when he did it, there were no ill effects recorded, believe it or not. So you can survive for a long time without eating anything. Water, on the other hand, you gotta have, or else you're gonna die. That's not a good thing. But he drank water, and he did have some vitamins and electrolytes to keep going. Other fasting patterns that are common, weekly or monthly patterns, say a couple number of days per week, or certain days of the week, X number of days per month, or a certain number of weeks per month. You can also do daily patterns, like fast for X hours and then eat for a certain number of other hours, keep going every day. You can shift the eating window earlier versus later, and we'll talk a little bit more about that. There's also this concept of time-restricted eating. And the distinction seems that it's basically the lack of caloric restriction, which is what happens with the fast. Now it's kind of fuzzy and blurry, and I wouldn't necessarily focus on one thing or another. They're very similar, but that is the definition and distinction that I found on the internet. Anyway, also fasting patterns can any combination of the above. You can do it daily, but also take a couple weeks off from eating in between doing intermittent fasting. So you can do a combination of a lot of different things. And there's even something called the fasting mimicking diet by a researcher and doctor named Walter Longo. And basically he found out that you can eat minimally, but you still get the benefits of fasting, okay? By the way, we fast every day already when we sleep. So the pattern's roughly 8 hours of fasting and a 16-hour eating window when we get up in the morning. We sleep about 8 hours a night. So we're already fasting every day. So it's not something that you shouldn't be familiar with. All right, so if you look back in history, fasting's been used for therapeutic use since Hippocrates, 5th century before BCE. So he had recommended back then for certain illnesses with certain symptoms. In the 19th century, research really began to understand the physiological effects of fasting. And then when we hopped into the 20th century, doctors started actually applying it to various conditions. So there are definitely religious purposes. A variety of religions fast for a lot of similar and also other reasons. There's also fasting for protest and solidarity. So like a hunger strike or anything like that, that's what fasting is also used for. Now, if you go way beyond even human history, a lot of historians and anthropologists debate about, actually what happened. Some say food was very scarce, and so people would, our ancestors way back then, cavemen and so forth, food was very scarce for them, and that it was very common for them to go a day or many days without food as you were going and hunting for something to eat. Others say that food was available in some form every day. So even though you might not have gotten your saber-toothed tiger or your mammoth for your big meal, you could pick plants and some other things that you could eat. A lot of people, of course, talk about there are no patterns of eating back then. We have 3 meals a day for most people, but back then there was nothing like that. And I encourage you to really look at how marketing, which is a very human thing, has influenced today's eating patterns. Read that article by How Breakfast Became a Thing from Pricenomics. Kind of details out how cereal manufacturers marketed breakfast, and now you think breakfast is something that you should be eating. Well, maybe and maybe not. Anyway, proponents of fasting say that it's something that we were evolved to do, and that today's world, we are eating constantly and way too much, and this is causing a number of health problems. So a little about what happens during fasting. This isn't a huge biology lesson, but at least I wanted to talk about, a little bit of what happens in the body. So after a couple hours without food, the body starts using up sugar and carbs. And then once those are used up, then fat starts getting burned. If the fasting time is long enough, then your metabolism will slow down. And then eventually your muscle will start being used for energy too. And that metabolism slowing down aspect is really interesting, and it may be the cause of actually why you might not see weight loss if you fast. So something to keep in mind. Something called autophagy, okay, big complex word, but it's actually very simple. It's basically when the body consumes old and worn out damaged cells and gets rid of them. So autophagy apparently is triggered by fasting, and it stimulates your growth hormone to produce new replacement cells. So that's a good thing, okay? The next paragraph, I just cut and pasted it from a research paper. So there's a lot of big words in there, but there's a lot of really good, interesting things that have come out through research in terms of what happens internally with respect to oxidative damage, inflammation, how you burn energy, how you protect your cells, even extending longevity. So really exciting things that people have started to get into and research and find out about fasting. So I encourage you to take a deeper look at those things if you like. Also, fasting actually puts your body under some stress. So under healthy conditions, that does cause positive adaptations. If you're already under stress, if you already have a depressed immune system, that stress could add to, unfortunately, take away from positive adaptations. So another thing to keep in mind. Oops, let's see. All right. So what are possible benefits? Weight loss is a very popular one that people use fasting for. You might have health conditions addressed. And again, I want to refer you back to the disclaimer that I talked about in the beginning. So, look at the references. You can see how potentially fasting could have a lot to do with helping with cancer, metabolic syndrome, obesity, diabetes, neurodegeneration, multiple sclerosis, inflammation, hypertension. It's likely not a replacement for traditional therapies, but if you add to it, then potentially traditional therapies might actually work even better. Longevity and aging we've talked about, so that is hard to test for because we don't have people just don't follow people for 20 or 50 years fasting and see what happens to them, but there are some exciting things that are coming out of research in that respect. Improved brain function, cognitive performance, brain health, those are other things that people have found when you fast. This is a really fancy picture that I copied from a research paper, so you can kind of dive into this. This PDF will be downloadable for you later. But yeah, lots of really interesting and good things happen when you fast. A across the spectrum in terms of all these organs that are affected, all in really good ways. So I encourage you to take a deeper look at this after this presentation. All right, what are some of the side effects? Some people report men and women react differently to fasting. Some people have seen that women seem to react negatively to fasting. Menstrual cycle effects, could be other things like headaches and loss of energy, those kind of things. However, when you dig into the research, it's really kind of unclear whether it's truly negative or not. So I think there needs to be more research done in that area. You might feel sick when you fast. Things like headaches, lack of energy, you're cranky, bowel movements become difficult, okay, with constipation. You might actually overeat during non-fasting periods. So you force yourself to starve. You don't eat anything. You get so hungry that you just eat a ton more during the eating window. As mentioned before, fasting is actually a stressor, and it can magnify given certain conditions. So stress generally is, we feel it too much in today's world. Reducing that is probably advantageous versus not. So fasting might actually contribute to that and make it worse. Again, back to your doctor. Fasting may be dangerous if you're on certain medications. Talk to your doctor before doing anything like this, especially if you're on medications now. Make sure your medical support is supportive of you, trying this out. Who should not fast? Along with that comment I just left with on the last slide, I went to a site who just listed a bunch of things that you might consider if you're one of these, to go talk to your doctor before starting fasting. If you're underweight, malnourished, if you have any eating disorders, children, adolescents, not recommended for that. Women who are pregnant or breastfeeding, women trying to conceive. Also, fasting could trigger cravings and overconsumption. So all these things are things to consider if you're thinking about trying out fasting. All right, now you have all this information about what it is. How do you put it in place? So the first thing you do is just simply, what is the pattern? Are you going to do full days, or are you going to do some kind of eating window in a day? Is it X number of days in a row? Okay. Maybe you could choose every Monday of every week, or every Monday and Friday, whatever pattern helps in your schedule. It could be X days per month. It could be X months, fasting X days per month. And if you're going to do it daily, do you want to do what they call like a ratio ratio of fasting to eating window fasting? So pick how many hours you will fast and how many hours you eat. Once you do that, it's just begin, because all you got to do is don't eat when you fast, and you can eat when your eating window hits. All right, so a little bit about this eating and fasting windows. If you're doing it daily, should the eating window be earlier or later? So fasting windows include sleep time overnight. So it's usually the aspect of skipping dinner or skipping breakfast is easiest for people, okay? Because our lives tend to be pretty busy in the morning. If you don't eat breakfast, you just wait till lunch. That seems pretty easiest. But there are researchers who look at your circadian clock, like all clocks are within the body. A lot of cells in our organs and our tissues all have clocks, right? We're all governed by daylight cycles and nighttime with no light. And presence of food actually affects those bodily clocks, apparently, in the metabolic processes. So if you eat off the schedules and off of the timing of what the light says when you should be eating, it could start disrupting your metabolic clocks, okay, and causing problems. There is some research that says that if you start the eating window earlier, so basically eating breakfast and lunch, say, that has some benefits to that. So you might consider thinking about that. Like I said, generally skipping breakfast is probably easiest for more people, but you can try skipping dinner and the evening time instead. All right, so there could be problems in adaptation. So you might need some time to kind of get adjusted. Some people can do it easily. They can flip on, boom, tomorrow I'm not going to eat, no big deal. And some people kind of got to build up, right? They start with a larger eating window, and then they start taking an hour off every couple of days, and they're feeling better about it, yeah, it might take some time to build up to maybe daily, going a full 24 hours without fasting, or multiple days of fasting. You also may want to get used to not taking in calories during that time, because your body and your mind, right, are used to potentially just feeding yourself, eating yourself, grabbing a snack, grabbing some peanuts or candy or whatever it is, or just drinking a Coke or something like that. Your body's used to that. And if it stops having that constant intake of calories, it may take some time for you to adjust to that. So an example would be, let's say I want to be able to fast 16 hours and eat 8. That's called 16-8 fasting, just as a notation. But your current pattern is actually reversed. So you sleep for 8 hours, and then as soon as you get up, you start putting stuff in your mouth. So what you can do is inch toward it. So the first try might be 10 hours of fasting and then 14 hours of eating. And if that's okay, move again to 12 hours and 12 hours. Okay, 12 hours fasting, 12 hours eating, and so on until you reach 16-8. You can move up 1 hour at a time. In my example, you're moving 2. Okay, so you can give it a shot and see what works best for you. And then eventually you could build up the full day fasting, which might be something you want to try. So what can I take in during the fasting period? Well, generally it's stuff that has no caloric value. However, having said that, it seems like some amounts or types of calories seem to be okay, given some research that other people have done. But first, let's talk about the things that people will take in that have no caloric value. Water, right? And again, I said that before. Some guys survive for 382 days without any food, but an average person can only survive 3 days without water. So make sure you drink water. Don't not drink water and not eat at the same time. Electrolytes, probably a good idea to make sure you take in some electrolytes. If you deplete your electrolytes, lots of bad things can happen. You can get weak and tired. There's something called hyponatremia, where if you take in too much water, basically reducing the ratio of electrolytes in your body, you can actually die from it or pass out in a race. That's what a lot of people do when they just take in water and they don't take in anything else with it. Breathing issues, constipation, cramps, paralysis, heart problems. So make sure you get your electrolytes in every day. Coffee and tea doesn't seem to affect fasting. So that's good for you coffee drinkers. I like my coffee too. Vitamins and minerals, that's along with electrolytes. Take those in. Useful for the body to function properly when you're not eating. But those really are about, the problems are only going to occur if you fast for multiple days at a time or for really long periods. Daily intermittent fasting probably doesn't matter so much, but it does mean that, hey, in the morning when you get up, you can take your vitamins, you can have your coffee, and everything will be fine until you officially eat at lunchtime, say. Calories that might be okay. So if you follow Dave Asprey, he's the guy who started biohacking. Supposedly he runs a company called Bulletproof. He created this thing called Bulletproof Coffee. It's basically coffee with MCT oil. It's a type of oil that's derived from coconut oil. And apparently when you drink that, you actually may be okay, because it doesn't induce insulin release, because you're only taking in fats and no carbohydrates or sugar. Now, some people have found out that you can even take in butter with coffee too, and that doesn't affect fasting. All I can say is try that, see if it works for you. I personally did it. I've had better results not taking an MCT oil generally, or definitely not butter, because there is protein in butter. So you got to try it and see if it works for you. Fasting mimicking diet actually is even more complex. A researcher by the name of Longo, as I mentioned before, he went in and to figure out, could people eat a little bit? And he has some specific goals in terms of longevity, weight loss, cancer, and all that kind of stuff. You can go read his research, very interesting stuff. But his research really only covers about 3 to 5 days and do it once a month. So a lot of research backing this, but only certain times. So you can kind of say that, yeah, this will probably work within those time frames. And you kind of see how the complex it is. There's day 1, there's a specific caloric intake, and then day 2 through 5 is even a little less. But you can kind of compare that to what people say is normal. for a person that what a body needs. So it's roughly like up to a third of what you would have normally taken in if you were just eating normally. But what he says is if you take in just those little bit, you can still get a little bit to eat, which may be more comforting for people instead of not eating anything. And you get the benefits of fasting on top of that. What can you eat during the eating period? Well, anything, almost. So yeah, you can eat whatever you normally eat and see if that works for you for whatever goal you might have. You can add in some particular eating pattern. It could be another diet, but you don't have to change if you don't want to, or if the goal is not being met, whatever goal you're trying to hit, then maybe you have to change whatever you put in your mouth too. So it could be dependent on other factors. Like for example, let's say you're trying to build muscle. A lot of popular standards say that in order to build muscle, you gotta eat 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. So during your eating window, you're gonna have to eat that much food, and spreading that amongst three meals a day is one thing. Trying to cram 3 meals into 2 could be challenging for some. Just something to think about. Another example could be if you're trying to lose weight, you might be fasting, but if you want to enhance the effects, you might want to combine that with a low carb diet, and then you'll find that your results may come faster or sooner. When do I stop fasting? Well, most proponents say you should just do this forever, for the rest of your life, because it's so good for you. Well, you could do that, or you can, whenever you reach your goals, whatever those goals are, I think then the question becomes, if you want to stop the fasting, then how do you maintain the state that you've achieved? And that's a larger question depending on what goal it is, and potentially more than we can cover here. How long do I have to maintain it? It varies widely on duration. It's very goal dependent. Like we said before, proponents say you should just do this forever, right? But also it depends on the state of health. So if there's something going on in your body and you're trying to lose weight, let's say, that fasting doesn't instantly help out in a short amount of time, it may take a lot longer based on what's going on in your body to allow you to lose weight. So again, we talked about low carb potentially, but yeah, joining with other protocols, definitely you can do that. Figure out what it is you want to get out of it, and then combine it. So like I said, weight loss fasting may work on its own without any other modifications. But if you combine it with other dietary approaches, you can enhance the effectiveness. So it could be low carb, could be keto, could be something more compact like sugar removal, could be a bunch of things, okay? But it's one of probably the easiest ways that you can enhance whatever goal you're heading towards simply by just eating a little bit less or compressing the eating window. All right, so say you started fasting and you run into some issues. Here are some common ones, and we can talk through them real quick. So one common problem is jumping too quick to a long fasting window. Let's say you and a bunch of buddies, you say, we're all gonna get together and not eat tomorrow. It's like, well, half of you fail, half of you made it, you all felt miserable, whatever. So yeah, it's nice to have a challenge and nice to think you can do something, but if you give yourself time to adapt, things will likely come a lot more comfortably. You may have feelings of hunger that you just can't seem to break. This could be a complex issue. It may just simply be an adaptation time that is longer, just kind of building up to it. But also you should be aware that there could be other biological and psychological issues that need to be resolved. For example, there could be yeast infections, emotional eating disorders that need to be addressed. There could be something even cultural versus personal. Say in the evenings, your friends are always calling you up and they want you to go out and go hit happy hour. It's like, well, are you able to stop that when you kind of designate a guy, I got to stop eating at 7 o'clock, but all your friends are screaming at you through text messages and calling you that you got to go and get some beers with your buddies. So those kind of draws and changes are not easily overcome sometimes, but you have to really think about that as you're working on fasting. What if your goal was not achieved? So let's say one example is your weight still stays the same. So you're going to have to then examine other factors, and you may need to add other protocols. It could be diet composition, amounts. You might need to eat less of this, more of that. Talked about the biological, psychological factors that you may need to take a look at. Usually what we do is we take a few days, have a diary, look at exactly what was eaten, how much. So you may mean that you need to measure and record and get into that for a couple days and see what exactly is wrong going on. Other protocols, again, that we can add or change in. Low carb, we can start really targeting the food amounts, the amount of food that you're taking in, removing sugar, removing processed foods, all common things that are tools that we use to help in troubleshooting when your goal is not achieved. You may actually also change the pattern of fasting. Sometimes people don't get success when they're doing it every day, but if they do it every other day, all of a sudden things start moving. So you really got to be flexible and adaptable and really look at how you respond to fasting. And there's a ton of combinations that work for people. Don't get stuck in thinking that if you're not getting what you need out of one pattern, then just there's no hope, but there's actually hope. Try a different pattern instead. All right, so a little bit about for athletes. Research is kind of mixed on if athletes fast and whether they get better at what they're doing in terms of performance. It seems to be dependent on the style of fasting. So you can, I put a good research paper in your downloads, which I'll talk about at the end of the presentation. So you can take a look at what people have found. If you train fasted, meaning you didn't have anything to eat right before, like a sports drink or some kind of carbohydrate boost, people have found that you enhance fat burning. There's more growth hormone, endurance gets a little better, even muscle growth, and get into a state of ketosis, which is just fat burning. Yeah, a lot of interesting things could happen if you just simply don't eat anything before you eat. And even not eating during the workout itself could be really good. Now, downsides could be that you might lose muscle, depending on the situation. You might have less energy. Your stress might go up because your body's craving energy and you didn't put more in to do it. So something to consider, but very interesting results if it works for you. Fasting seems to improve mitochondria development. So if you deploy it in a good way, it could enhance performance overall. Having lots of mitochondria, healthy mitochondria, is a good thing for anybody exercising. It can improve weight loss and weight control, which is always a good thing, especially in certain sports like that require you to make a certain weight to be able to compete. I guess the concept really is you want to make sure you eat enough of the right foods for recovery, energy, no matter how often you eat or what you don't eat or not eat. So make sure that you study what it is you're doing and eat enough to recover, to give you the energy for the next workout. Okay, and whatever goals you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to build muscle, you're gonna have to eat more protein. If you're going for an Ironman or some endurance race, make sure you're recovering properly for that activity too. So to sum it all up, research is showing that fasting can have a number of great health-related benefits. Please talk to your doctor before you go do this. Again, pointing back to the disclaimer, it can be a great tool to achieve goals such as weight loss and other things too. Work with your doctor, okay? Can't emphasize that enough. If you have health, especially if you have health issues or taking medication, fasting is super easy to do, but it can be really hard to start up, right? Check all those factors, biological, psychological, and remember, it might just take you a little bit of time to build up to whatever fasting window or fasting pattern you want to deploy. So give yourself some compassion and just be slow. If you can't just jump to the end result, you can always give it a try if you want. But if you fail, that's totally okay. Just start 1 hour at a time, 2 hours at a time, taking away your eating window and build up to it slowly. And most people can get there, okay? Tons of variation exists. We listed all of those in the beginning. Pick the one that works best for you and your lifestyle and your goals. Yeah, mix and match. You can try a bunch of things, see how it all works. But yeah, fasting is a very broad topic in a very broad area. Don't get stuck into, I have to fast 5 days out every month, right? That's That's one style, might work for you, might not work for you, and that's okay. All right, so I talked about downloading resources, this presentation. You can go to this short URL, find my Dropbox folder with this presentation, as well as a bunch of papers I threw in there. Yeah, ds.ly/pg-fasting-talk. Go there, download the materials, have a look, and if you have any questions or comments, you can always go into the Mighty Networks group and post your questions there about fasting or anything else about nutrition. And yeah, here's the downloads again. If you have comments about anything, happy to hear them. Just email me at dshen@coachdshen.com. You can find me at www.coachdshen.com. I'm part of the Performance Gains Health Coaching, Life Coaching program. So if you're already a member there, I would encourage you to check it out and sign up, and perhaps we can work together closely on fasting or any other issues that you might have related to your health and nutrition, which is one of my favorite areas to coach. And with that, I see two other people here. I don't know if there's any questions or comments, but if there aren't.
I had a question.
Oh yeah, go Dave. Or is that's Dave, right?
So you were talking about how like consuming butter and like fats when you're in a fasting state will keep you'll stay fasted, I guess, is what you were saying, right? Is there like a threshold for that? Or is there like or is it just strictly because it's a glycemic index type thing? Or yeah, maybe go into that a bit, because I wasn't really sure when you said butter you could maintain a fast while having butter like in your coffee or something like that.
Yeah, so Bulletproof Coffee started with Dave Asprey going to, this is how the story goes. I think he went to Tibet, and there were a bunch of guys hiking in the mountains and up Mount Everest, and that kind of thing, right? And they would put in yak butter in their tea, and it gave them a ton of energy. So he kind of brought that back and tried it in coffee. It's like, oh, well, how can anybody not like butter in their coffee, right? Or butter for anything, butter, popcorn, or anything. So, and it does taste awesome. I highly recommend it if you want to try it. But he, along the way, then switched to MCT oil. MCT stands for medium chain triglyceride, right? Like I said, it's derived from coconut oil. And what they discovered with MCT oil is that it's a kind of fat that does not get stored in your fat cells. It goes directly into the cells that need the energy, okay, whether it's your brain or somewhere else. And so if you take a little bit of that in the morning, you can often find, like, you wake up, you don't have hunger cravings or anything like that. It's pretty interesting stuff. So anyway, that's kind of the genesis of what Bulletproof Coffee is. So then getting to your question, which is, in theory, a lot of fasting benefits happens because insulin is not released. Like your metabolic system is hopefully or more likely in ketosis, which is activating ketones and burning fat for energy. And so that's where the theory is. And I don't think anybody has done a ton of research. I think a lot of it has been anecdotal, that people have been drinking fat or oils in their coffee, and it doesn't seem to be affecting the benefits of fasting. I would guess that probably more research needs to be done if somebody really cares. I'm not sure people do, but it seems much easier and also cheaper, because buying MCT oil is actually quite expensive. But yeah, it seems to be related to the lack of insulin released and the maintenance of fat burning, from overnight, when you wake up.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah, you bet.
I also have a question.
Yeah, Kevin.
Just a quick question. Is there like an age range of who can fast, or can like young kids do it as well and older people can do it, or is there like an age range that only certain people of a certain age can do it?
I think in one of my earlier slides, they don't recommend children or adolescents to do it. Well, I guess it depends, right? When, say, a child or somebody you work with, maybe it's an adolescent training, skips breakfast, is something bad going to happen? I would say no. I think a lot of parents, right, we get antsy about our kids needing to eat and all this stuff, but I'm not sure there's evidence that says that if somebody just skips breakfast, that something bad's going to happen. Now, there are definitely, we don't want to stifle growth, right? When a growing body under someone under 18, under 21, not adult, right, needs nutrients of all sorts, we just let them go, right there. And we don't want to necessarily restrict any of that. And hopefully we can give them more, because oftentimes they have eating preferences, right? I don't want to eat broccoli because it, and I want this kind of thing. I want to eat that kind of thing. So there's already kind of these issues about getting them to eat enough anyway, or enough of the right stuff. So, and also we want to make sure that we don't inadvertently insert eating disorders on top of that. So, so there's a bunch of reasons why we don't necessarily want kids under, or people under 21 or 18-ish to fast as an activity, right? A directed activity, and also say, oh, you need to lose weight. You know, that you start laying those kind of cultural judgments on the people, on the kids, especially. Who knows what's going to happen, right? We really lay them on adults, and look what's happening with that. So, now, anybody above that, if they're healthy, if there's nothing intrinsically wrong with them, it is likely possible that they can do it. If they have any health issues or anything like that, yeah, definitely work with a doctor to implement it. You may even want to just check with your doctor and see if he knows something that he didn't bother to tell you, or that maybe you didn't know, or maybe you forgot and that he might remember. But no, there isn't really, if you're a healthy person, any age restriction on fasting, as far as we know.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah, you bet. Oh, any other comments or questions?
Yeah, I think that's it.
All right. Well, thanks for coming. I think this will probably go on the Performance Gains YouTube channel. And for those of you who haven't, encourage you to go to Mighty Networks. If you're especially if you're a Performance Gains member already, join up there. That's where you find all your classes now. Post your questions there about anything, including nutrition, but also workouts and exercise and all that kind of stuff. There's a whole bunch of coaches floating there. And yeah, we're here to help you out, and hope you enjoyed this talk, and we'll see you next time.
Sounds good. Thank you.
Thank you for coming.